taking notes on finding the volume of composite figures. Now let's remember that a composite figure is two rectangular prisms that have kind of been put together. So let's say we have one rectangular prism there. We would have another rectangular prism here. And our composite figure would be those two pieces put together. Now the key to finding the volume of both of those figures is dividing it in half, right where you can make one rectangular prism and another rectangular prism, and then labeling them. I like to say figure A and figure B. And then we're going to find the volume of figure A and add it to the volume of, that should be a V, the volume of figure B. And that's how we're going to find the composite volume. Remember, the volume is the space inside of the figure. So let's go ahead and get started with this first one. All right, so for this first one, you can see we have a lot of numbers. Some of them we're going to use, and some of them we're not even going to use. Let's go ahead and get started by thinking about where we're going to divide it. I think the easiest looking way would be right here. So you might want to go ahead and pause the video now to fill in the numbers and divide up your composite figure. Now let's start. This is figure A, this is figure B. Let's find the volume of figure A. So remember, we want the length times the width times the height. Let's go ahead and look that up. So the length is how long it is. So I'm going to say it is 3 inches long. That is my length. Remember, the width is how deep it is. So that's from here to here, but there's no number there. Remember, what you have to do is go searching around the rest of the figure. The width down here is 2 inches, and I know that the width stays the same throughout the entire composite figure. So I know that the 2 inches also goes up here. So my width is 2 inches. Now let's find the height. I know that the height is going to be this line, but there's no number there. The height's also this line, but that 8 inches goes for the entire line, and we don't want that. So I have to figure out how I'm going to discover what only this part is. Looking around the figure, I see this 5 inches here. I see that the 5 inches is this line. So if I take the 8 inches minus your 5 inches, that's going to give me 3 inches left. So I know my height for that box is 3 inches. Now all we have to do is find the volume of figure A by multiplying our length times our width times our height. We do 3 times 2 is 6, and then 6 times 3 is 18. So I know the volume of figure A is 18 inches cubed. Now this is figure A. Now let's look at figure B. Again, we want length times width times height. So let's look at that length. We know that the length is 5 inches because it's right here. That's how long it is. We already know that our width is 2 inches because the width stays the same. Now we have to find our height. So again, we have this 8 inches over here, but it's the whole thing. So I'm going to look back over here and see that it's 5 inches tall because we're just going for this one box. So I can put a 5 there. Now to solve my volume, I'm going to multiply 5 times 2 is 10. Times 5 gets me 50 inches cubed. Now all we have to do is add those together. 50 plus 18 is going to get me 68 inches cubed as our composite volume. See, that wasn't so bad. Let's try another one. Looking at this one, it's time to divide it up. So let's go ahead and divide it up right here. I think that's going to be best for us. Let's label it figure A and figure B, and let's get started. We know we're going to need length times width times height. Go ahead, draw this out. You need to draw it out every time for composite figures because a lot of times if you don't, it gets really confusing. So figure A and figure B. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to and make sure you've got everything filled in the way it should be. All right, for this one, let's look for our length. For figure A, I can see it is 4 inches long. Don't let that 3 inches fool you, because remember, this spot here would not be covered by that 3 inches. So we look up here, it is 4 inches long. The entire rectangular prism is 4 inches long. Now let's look for our width. How wide is it? If we look right here, the width, the line going back, is 1 inch. So that's how long or how wide it is. And last but not least, let's look for our height. Don't get distracted by that 3 inches again. That's still just partial of the length. We're going to look over here at this 1 inch. That's how tall this rectangular prism is. So now let's solve. 4 times 1 is 4, times 1 is 4. So I've got 4 inches cubed for figure A. Now let's go down to figure B. Let's start with our length. So our length is one we're going to have to figure out, because as you can see, we really don't know how long it is. We know that it's 6 inches tall from the very tip top of both of them to the very bottom, but we're looking for length right now. So we know that the entire figure, the top one was 4 inches wide, and the bottom one is 3 inches. So that means that I'm looking for this little line here. I'm going to say 4 inches minus 3 inches gets me 1 inch. So that little line right there is going to be 1 inch. Now let's look at our width. As you can see, there's no width down here. But we can look back up here at the width of figure A, and we can see that the width is going to be the same, because remember, the width is the same when we're doing composite figures. It's still 1 inch. Now let's do our height. We can see that from all the way up here to all the way down here is 6 inches, but we're looking to stop it right here. So let's look at our 6 inches. We know that this here is 1 inch. So if I get rid of that 1 inch, I'm going to say 6 inch minus 1 inch. I'm going to get 5 inches. Let's go ahead and solve it. That means our length is 1 times 1 is our width is 1 times 5 of our height gives us 5 inches cubed. I hope you understood that one. Make sure to ask questions if you have any. If you got it wrong or you don't understand, please come ask questions. I'm still here. Last but not least, let's dive into this one. Go ahead, take a minute and label it with everything you see. All right, so this one's a little bit trickier because we have to divide it into 3 separate shapes. Now, the thing is, we could divide it horizontally or vertically. I'm going to choose to divide it vertically. I hope that's the way you choose to. So we're going to need to label them A, B, C. So we're going to need 3 separate figures. So over here on the side, I'm going to go ahead and say A, length times width times height. B, length times width times height. You should be writing these out with me. Remember, for composite figures, you need to write out the length and the width and the height every time. Now let's get started. Let's start with length. Length is pretty easy because it's labeled on all of them. I can see that A is 5 inches long. I can see that B is 4 inches long. And I can see that C is 5 inches long. That one was pretty easy. Now let's do width. Remember, width stays the same for all of them. So our width, if you see over here, is 2 inches. 2 inches. So all of them are 2 inches wide. Last but not least is our height. So let's take a look at these. We can see that this A is 6 inches tall because it tells us right there. Now the other ones get a little more complicated. We can see that C is 2 inches tall. So that's good. We can go ahead and fill in C. But B we have to figure out. So we want to figure out this line right here. I know that this line is 2 inches and this line is 2 inches. So if I add these two together, that'll get me 4 inches as my height for B. I want you to go ahead and calculate what you think our composite area is going to be and fill it in the blank. All right, let's calculate it and see if we got the same answer. 5 times 2 is 10, times 6 is 60. 4 times 2 is 8, times 4 is 32. 5 times 2 is 10, times 2 is 20. Let's add those up. 112 inches cubed is what you should have gotten for your composite volume. Let's go ahead and do one word problem. Mary wants to stack 2 boxes. The first box is 8 inches tall, 3 inches wide, and 4 inches long. The second box is 9 inches long, 2 inches tall, and 3 inches wide. What is the volume of both boxes combined? So what you need to do for this one is go ahead and write first box and do length times width times height. And then second box and do length times width times height. This one sounds pretty easy. I bet you can solve it on your own. So go ahead and try and put your answer in the blank. All right, so for this one, our first box is 8 inches tall, so that's our height, 3 inches wide, and 4 inches long. Remember, because of the commutative property of multiplication, it actually doesn't matter what order you put them in, but I like to make sure they're in at least what I think is the right order. The second box is 9 inches long, 2 inches tall, and 3 inches wide. Now let's solve it. 4 times 3 is 12 times 8. I don't have my 12s memorized today, so let's go ahead and work that out. That's 96. 9 times 3 is 27 times 2. Should have gotten you 54. Now let's add it together. 150 inches cubed is the answer you should have gotten. Remember, if you don't understand why you got the wrong answer, make sure you're asking questions so that I can help you. All right, that's the end of our notes today. Go ahead and get your classwork started, but make sure you glue those notes down first.